River Valley Chapter and the News Messenger. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You all, as you came in, got the guidelines for this evening. I briefly called your attention to some of that information and asked you to review that and keep this for your reference. The forum is being videotaped by the town of Blacksburg's videographer. The video will be available as described on this sheet. We encourage you to submit questions. There are cards available and handed to our helpers. They will be reviewed for duplication and passed on to me, and I'll do my best to ask as many of them as we can. The candidates have contributed information in the voter guide that is in the lobby too for you to pick up, that you can get that information. Also pick it up on your way home, and it's available online also as described on your guidelines for this evening. There will be copies also in the public library. I'd like to introduce our question screeners, Casey Newell, Wayne Warner, and Carol Linker. Our timers, Karen Novak and Susan Gurley. We ask that you reserve your applause for the end. We want to give our candidates as much time as we possibly can to hear from them. The one candidate who's not up here for the Board of Supervisors is Mary Biggs, who is running for re-election to District F, and she is unopposed, and so we thought we'd give her the night off. So Mary, if you just stand so everyone can say it. Okay, and now I'd like to introduce the candidates up here. On your left, my right, at the end for District B is Johnny Puckett. Next to him is Christopher Tuck. On my immediate right is Michael Abraham, District E candidate. And on my immediate left is another District E candidate, Daryl Shepard. I've got to get my cheat sheet here. And then next to him is April DeMonts and Bill Murray, who are District G candidates. The candidates were given a starting question yesterday just to get us going tonight. I wasn't prepared that you all would have so many questions already for me. They were asked to comment on what insights they have learned from the district voters as they've been campaigning this fall. And I'm going to start with Mr. Puckett, please.
Some of the people I've spoke with are concerned with some of the trailers we have in behind the school's property.
Use the microphone.
And also the tax increases.
Can't hear. Can't hear.
And
Do we have a technical person who can adjust Mr. Puckett's microphone?
And give him another minute.
Yeah, right, yeah. Can we start over here? Is there someone here who can adjust the microphone?
Let's get closer. Or maybe if you, I'm happy to slide down and you can slide in front and that way.
That's better.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll start the timer again for this question. Okay.
I've spoken with the voters, and a lot of their concerns is safety for our children, as far as the trailers and stuff in behind the schools, especially at Palm Branch. I've spoke with them about the tax increases. They're worried about more tax increases. The income on some of the people I've spoke with, they're living off $750, $850 a month. And I can understand their concerns of what we're trying to do, keep the taxes low as possible, but they also, I've explained to them that they need to understand that, you know, there are going to be taxes. There are always going to be taxes. We try to work with it, keep them as low as possible. But their concern mainly is the budgets and things that we've been passing along here in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Puckett. Mr. Tuck.
The thing that has kind of surprised me and I've learned is how diverse Christiansburg has become. When I was going door to door, I knocked on a door and there was an Asian couple who were studying over at Virginia Tech. I knocked on the next door. It was a Middle Eastern couple. I knocked on the next door and it was a young lady from Kentucky who was studying at Virginia Tech. And during the process of going door to door, you start asking folks, well, what brought you to Christiansburg? And one of the things that they've said is that because it's affordable, that they can live there. And I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to keep the tax rate low the last 2 years, and I voted against the 2 previous tax increases. But I just didn't say no to that. I came up with my own budget to make sure that we would be fiscally responsible, meet the needs of the county, but not have excessive tax increases.
Ms. Fairbrand?
My district is a fascinating mix of rural, suburban, and academic, spanning the banks of the New River all the way to the Corporate Research Center and the Virginia Tech drill field. And the issue that was on a lot of the voters' minds in my district is growth. Montgomery County is currently adding an astounding 800 to 1,000 residents every year. And Virginia Tech's new president has publicly announced aggressive plans to grow the student body briskly over the next several years. With those new students will come hundreds of associated personnel. So there will be a surge in new housing. My voters want to know where it's going to go. With Blacksburg being geographically constrained on the north and east, and with Christiansburg already growing to the south, much of it will inevitably move west into my district. So one of the things Montgomery County has cherished the most is its rural character. How are we going to preserve the antiquities and the family farms? The farms of the McDonalds, the Hogues, the Walls, the Childresses, the Shorters, the Grahams. As a Montgomery County native and a writer and someone deeply interested in culture.
I cut you off, I'm sorry. Mr. Shepherd?
As I've been out in the community of District D campaigning, a couple of issues always come to the surface. One of the big questions I get asked is, you're not going to raise my taxes, are you? That's usually number one. A close second is, how do we create more jobs? I think if we want to keep good highway and infrastructure maintenance, excellent schools, and outstanding public safety programs without raising taxes, we have to grow the economy and create jobs that will increase revenue to meet our needs. A couple of ways that we can do this without taking a bigger bite out of the taxpayers' budgets is to spur more economic growth. I believe by keeping taxes low, which allows current businesses to thrive, we're automatically inviting more business from national, international, and individual self-starter business from some of the graduates at Virginia Tech, for example.
Thank you. Mr. Motts?
There are 3 big issues that I hear consistently when I'm out knocking doors in District G. The 3 big ones are the old Blacksburg Middle School site, the old Blacksburg High School site, and public education. And with just a minute to answer this question, it's not possible to adequately address all 3 topics. I know the 2 old school properties will come up later in the forum, so I'd like to take just a moment to talk about my stance on public education. I was honored to receive the endorsement of the Montgomery County Education Association for my stance on public education. I'm a product of public education, and my 3 children are in elementary, middle, and high school in Montgomery County. I'm a huge advocate for public education, for our educators, and for our children. Our schools are the backbone of our community. They serve as an economic driver and are a major contributor to the overall quality of life in Montgomery County. I will always advocate for high-quality public education.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
District G is larger than I ever realized from a map, and so I've talked to a lot of people. Their priorities and concern are as varied as the district. So I've distilled it down to about 6 points. The first is education. They want to see education continue to be held to a high standard for their children and for the community. They're also very concerned about affordable housing. They feel like housing is getting too expensive in Blacksburg, and they may be forced out. Another one is stormwater management, which is tied uncannily to wildlife encroachment. Then there's the MVP pipeline, which is its own story, and taxes. They wanted, one person asked me to keep the tax, not raise taxes, and he's a senior citizen with unmet medical needs. So I told him, I'm not going to raise taxes for you, and I feel we can make that commitment because over the years we've had enough growth in the county.
Thank you, Mr. John. Mr. Murray? The next question I'm going to, sort of is predicated, there's 3 questions here that are all related to balancing the interests of your particular district. I've heard some of you say my district, and with the total county. So the question is, are there issues that you see that are particular to your district that you might have to handle in a way different than the whole county, and how are you going to balance that? So that's the question. And Mr. Tuck, I'm going to start with you.
Well, a few things. Right now, and my opponent mentioned, we have 17 mobile units in the Christiansburg strand. There are no other mobile units anywhere else. And so as far as one of the things that I've been trying to work with the school board and coming up with plans on perhaps utilizing the old Christiansburg Middle School, which was remodeled to accommodate the Blacksburg Middle School. The school board has been reluctant to do that, but we are in talks with them about expanding Falling Branch, and to be able, when it was built, it was designed to be expanded. That would take care of 8 mobile units right there, but at the same time, we still have major issues with Christiansburg Primary, Christiansburg Elementary School. Those are issues that don't have impacts necessarily, but as our chairman, Mr. Brown says, we are like a beating heart, and there are 7 chambers, and if one of them is not working properly, then the heart is not working properly. So I would try to work for all citizens in Monroe County.
Thank you. Mr. Abraham?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. As each of our districts go, we all go. My district, of course, we're elected by districts. Our first responsibility is to the district. But I grew up in Christiansburg. I grew up in a different district, and I'm very mindful of the interrelationship of all these districts working together. I think we all realize that the Christiansburg strand of our school system is the most in need of additional facilities at this point. And for me to stand out in my district and say, no, I'm not going to do that because we have what we need, is just not appropriate. I believe in a strong county. I believe in all of us working together, and very much a shared future and shared prosperity.
Okay. Mr. Shepherd?
I think in District D, especially, a lot of it is rural area, farmland. So you have the McDonald's, the Walls, the Hogs, as he spoke of earlier. Virginia Tech is encroaching on that property. I think that's a big thorn in everybody's side as far as the farmer's view. One farm has already been taken, and that's Kentland. With all that growth comes more people, and more people, your infrastructure struggles. So I think we have to work together. I've never heard that statement that Mr. Tuck said about the heartbeat, but I believe that to be true. So I think we all have to work together to try to work through these issues.
Mr. Mons?
At the risk of sounding like I'm saying the same thing over again, I'm going to talk about education, specifically that we have some short and long-term capital planning needs. Of course, the Christiansburg strand is already facing overcrowding, and we're soon to face that as well in Blacksburg. That affects both my district and the entire county. I strongly believe that we cannot have an excellent public school system without excellent facilities. So I'm very much looking forward to being able to have input and a positive effect on the budgeting process as we move forward and plan for expanded facilities and new facilities for our schools.
Mr. Murray?
The district issues I see that my constituents, people I've talked to, brought education. They want to know what's going to happen to the Blacksburg High School property. And right now, as I understand, it's just gone out for RFP, so there's no answer yet. At one time, there was talk of putting a rescue squad building there, but they've done that on Peck Henry and Progress. So that's off the table. Maybe business, a park, which would be nice if you could tie it into education. somehow. There's, the other thing that they're concerned about is wildlife encroachment. There seems to be a connection between the wildlife encroachment and retention ponds. And I was just talking to somebody who says, you call animal control, they're not going to respond to wildlife because they're not equipped. They can do cats and dogs, but they can't do bears, skunks, coyotes, and other wildlife animals that need to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murray. Mr. Bucket.
District B, again, we're talking about these schools. I think going through and campaigning, if you look through Christiansburg District B, you see a lot of empty businesses. We need to learn how to draw businesses into our community. That's going to help offset some of the taxes, going to help us improve our schooling and things like that. The schools, especially, like I said, Fallen Branch, the trailers down there, they need to be replaced with right beside the interstate. We've got kids coming out of those schools, going to the bathroom by themselves and things, and that's a big concern. And that's one thing that I think we ought to be able to get some businesses in here, try to generate some revenue to where we can handle those problems.
May I respond for 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
One of the things I'm very proud of is the fact that we kept Hubble lighting here. And Mary's here in the room with us, and she knows that there was a real chance that they were going to close down Hubble lighting. We were going to lose all those jobs. The board worked together, all 7 of us, to make sure, and Matt's here as well, back there, all 7 of us worked together to make sure that we kept Hubble lighting here, as well as bringing 100 jobs. Those are the type of jobs that we need, and it ensures that we're going to have a diverse economy, not just one that's totally dependent on Virginia Tech.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask another question, and this time I'm going to start with Mr. Abraham. Local government decisions and services are guided by boards and commissions appointed by the Board of Supervisors, such as the Library Board, the Planning Commission, Department of Social Services Boards, and there's a number of others. How will you work to seat persons who will reflect the diversity of the county, as well as providing effective leadership?
Well, as Mr. Tuck said earlier, our county is becoming increasingly diverse, and I think we're all aware of that. I grew up in a religious minority in Christiansburg, Virginia, and all my life I've been mindful of the minority viewpoint. And I think that that will help me to have compassion for and respect for people who are coming here to our community who may be of a diverse nature. And I think it's just getting to know people and realizing that we're all, again, we have a shared destiny, and putting these people in positions where they can help us.
Mr. Shepherd.
I worked for Virginia Tech for 28 years, and I've worked the entire time in a very, very diverse community. As a police officer for 12 years, dealing with those people on an individual basis, and I'm not singling anybody out, but just all of them. I believe that when you appoint members to the board or committee, you have to make your board or committee mirror the community that they're going to be serving. I think it's only fair and right. I would hope that we could find individuals that would volunteer that would make that mirror image possible.
Okay, Ms. Lance.
I think we start with community engagement and empowering and encouraging our locally elected officials to become engaged in the community outside of just what happens in the government center. So getting engaged in community service organizations or professional organizations operating in the community, so you're able to be in touch with more people than you would be if you're just spending the majority of your time on either appointed boards or in Board of Supervisors meetings. We want to have boards and commissions that are reflective of a diversity of incomes. We want a diversity of backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, and I really think that that starts by each of us embracing a spirit of community engagement and getting out there and learning who's in the community, and then asking those people to get involved and keeping on pressuring them until they do.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Well, serving on the county boards, the problem I see in the county, and it's not just Montgomery County, it's all over, people's unwillingness to step forward. I think we need diversity on our boards in the county, but we also need to get the best people, and that's not determined by filling a slot with a particular individual of a certain type. We need to find people, motivate people somehow to step up and serve. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. We need to get our best people out there to serve on the library board, planning commission especially, and to show up at the meetings so that they can have their input in the weekend. And I agree with April, we need to get out there and motivate people somehow to step forward and do it. I mean, this forum has a nice turnout. It's really nice to see. It would be better for the boards, that would be better.
Mr. Puckett?
Yes, I think as far as we need to get diversity, but while we're out here campaigning, I can't see why we can't speak to people and try to recruit people to get involved and do things like that. Try to get them to, I mean, we're talking to middle class, lower class, all types of people. We're talking to all nationalities. Try to get them involved, get them to the meetings, get their inputs, and recruit while we're out there campaigning, trying to earn their votes at the same time.
Okay, Mr. Duck?
Well, I've got the luxury of being on the board, and one of the things that we do when we have a vacancy is we immediately advertise it, we put it out on our county website, and then the board members try to recruit. We've got an excellent planning commission. We've got some of the top people, we've got educators on our but we also have folks like Brian Rice, who's a real estate agent. And so we've got diversity, and one of the ways that we do that is that we try to select from each portion of the county by taking individuals from each district. We do that with the library board, we do that with the planning commission, and so we do our best to try to have not just diversity as far as race and gender, but diversity throughout our county, including economic factors.
Thank you. Mr. Abraham? I started with you. Sorry, I knew I'd get all confused here tonight.
I can say some more if you
No,
like.
no. I'm going to ask Mr. Shepherd to start us the next question. Here, the next question, and basically what I'm doing, focusing on here a little bit for people to get to know you and the strengths that you bring. It's sort of a job interview. So the job interview question is another one here. What strengths and experience do you bring to your service, to the service that you're proposing to do as supervisor? And there's a question from the audience here too, in terms of letting us know some of your civic involvement over the years.
Well, I've worked my way up through the ranks at Virginia Tech. Started out in a physical plant and was a heavy equipment operator, and I went from there to the supervisor. And at that time, I sat on several committees. That was when physical plant was just beginning to incorporate computer-programmed, computer-generated work orders. And I had a big hand in helping develop that software. So I worked on several committees during that period of time. As a police officer, working my way through the ranks there, I went from officer to, at the position now it's called corporal. At the time it wasn't a corporal's position, but you had those responsibilities to sergeant. And working my way through those, I also worked on several committees and boards with a very diverse group of individuals all over the university.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to close you out. Ms. Mott?
I moved to Blacksburg, Virginia from Kingsport, Tennessee. Tennessee is known as the volunteer state, and my mother took that to heart and raised us accordingly. So community service and civic engagement is something that is extremely important to me, and it's a value that my partner and I work very hard to instill in our children as well. For my community engagement outside of my professional career, I am the president of Sustainable Blacksburg. I've served on the board of the New River Valley Apartment Council for the past 12 years. I'm also on the board of the Virginia Apartment Management Association. I'm a member of the Mount Tabor Ruritan Club, and I know many people in this audience regularly attend our fish fries. The Ruritan Club is a community service organization, and that's one of our biggest annual fundraisers. I also am the vice chair of the Town of Blacksburg's Housing and Community Development Advisory Board, so I'm very engaged in many ways in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
My civic involvement, I've been involved wherever I've lived and worked. When I was living and working up in the DC area, I was an advocate for disability rights with special ed, the Northern Virginia Disability Advocacy Group, the Independent Center of Northern Virginia, and I was a volunteer mentor with Shenandoah University in the community. I also, locally, when 401 Gibbons Lane was rezoned, I ended up with an advocacy role there, and April was part of that too. Together we were able to mitigate losses, there were losses. I met with the owner and the park manager, and we got everybody accommodated, but some people voted with their feet and left the area because they couldn't find affordable housing in the area. So I've done that. I've been on a number of other volunteer boards.
I have to cut you off.
Did you wait till the end, or can I say something using my 30 seconds now?
Go ahead.
Okay, just to address a little bit about the Gibbons Lane, the 301 and 401 Gibbons Lane. I've been very involved with the Blacksburg Estates community since 2013, and also as a member of the Town of Blacksburg's Housing and Community Development Advisory Board. We worked very hard to develop a list of provisions for all of the residents in the park, so that if they were asked to move from one side to the other, they were at the very least made whole in that move.
Thank you. Mr. Puckett?
I've been involved in volunteering ever since I got out of the service. I was a firefighter in Green Valley out in West Virginia until I moved out here. I've been out here for 36 years. I'm a volunteer, member of a Christian Rescue Squad. I volunteered for coaching upward basketball. I volunteered for BCYB baseball here in Blacksburg. I've tried to put myself in every kind of position to learn people, to learn their concerns, help their children, be a mentor to their children. And I feel that I've been a real strong person here in our community as far as volunteering. I was a deputy sheriff for almost 15 years. I worked my way up from correctional sergeant, from corrections to sergeant to road sergeant, and I'm currently working at Orville ATK now.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck.
Well, when I returned from law school, one of the first things I did was get involved with legal aid. I am currently on legal aid's board. I've been on their board for 17 years. I have done quite a bit of pro bono work, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where we were successful. As far as trying to give back to the community, my wife has threatened me if I volunteer for anything else, she may divorce me over that, so I draw the line there. But as far as the experience I bring for the 4 years, I've done my best. I've tried to make informed decisions, tried to make sure I had good information before I made a decision, tried to sound things off other people who might disagree with me. Because one of the things I'm concerned about is when you don't listen to the other side and you simply vote no. And sometimes my party gets labeled with that, and I wanted to make sure that I had a good reason when I say no to something.
Mr. Abraham?
Well, I started, I guess, with a good education from a great university. I have a degree in mechanical engineering from here at Virginia Tech. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and probably the thing I'm most proud of in my life as an achievement. I'm part of a legacy family. My dad went to Tech, I went, my daughter went. I think my mother is still sort of astounded that I got through it. But thanks for the confidence, Mom. I've had a diverse career. Most recently, in my time here in Montgomery County, back in Montgomery County, I ran Christiansburg Printing, our family business, for about 17 years. I'm a partner in Pocahontas Press with my wife, and I'm also a published author. There are 7 books that I have now on the market. They make great Christmas gifts, by the way. That was a joke. Somebody could laugh, please. I have experience now with marketing, management, sales, and planning. I'm a student of culture. I'm a good listener. As far as volunteer activities, I'm a member of the Blacksburg Rotary Club.
Thank you. Sure. Everybody gets it, please.
I didn't get to public service. I started out right out of high school. I joined the Long Shop Volunteer Fire Department. Was active with them for several years. Growing up, and even recently, within the last month, volunteered to play music. I'm a musician for churches and benefits. The latest one was for St. Michael's for their Micah's backpack. Spent a lot of time with the police department, volunteering my time also.
Thank you. The next question, Mrs. Watson, I'm going to have you start us out. Let's start talking about how the town and the county get along and collaborate and cooperate. What is the best way for the towns and county to share responsibility for protecting the quality of life and to develop for economic development?
That's a very interesting question. In order to share responsibility for economic development and protecting the quality of life, I think first we need to recognize that town councils and the Board of Supervisors have often divergent goals. When you start from a place of misunderstanding, thinking that everybody is going towards the same goal, you'll end at another place of misunderstanding, and then you might end with also hurt feelings. So I think if we can begin the relationship with the understanding of what the goals of the various town, or both of the town councils are, and what the goals of the Board of Supervisors are, that's the best place to start to get to the finish line with smiles on our faces.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
The town versus the county, I don't know that there's any conflict there. I know both members of the town, I know all the members of the town council and all the members of the county board of supervisors. They're all, in my opinion, honorable people, and I think they work well together. When they have problems, they will try to get together and hash out their differences. So we're all one family in the county, whether we're in the town, at Blacksburg or Christiansburg. And we have shared interests to keep everybody happy, affordable housing, good education, police and fire services. And that we have to do collectively. We can't do it as the county board or the town councils. We have to depend on one another, and we have to work together for all our citizens.
Okay, Mr. Puckett?
I think that, Christiansburg, Blacksburg, and the Board of Supervisors all do work well together. If we have any problems or anything, I think they should sit down with each other. I think at one time they used to actually have dinner meetings once a year, and maybe we can get back to that and have meetings where we can sit and talk over problems, things that may be coming up, and I think it would help out the relationship between, if there's any tension between any of the Blacksburg, Christiansburg, or the board members, that we could all sit down and just break bread together. Pretty much it.
Thank you. Mr. Tuck?
Well, I think that there has been some difficulties. We have struggled. One of the things that I've tried to do prior to the RFPs going out or receiving responses from them is to reach out to the Blacksburg Town Council, to try to talk with them, to try to listen also, to see what they had to say and their perspectives on things. We haven't agreed on some issues. We need to work through those problems together for the benefit of all their citizens. As a county, we need to look and understand that the Blacksburg has its vision for what they want to see developed. At the same time, we need the town of Blacksburg to see that we have educational needs, such as the mobile units throughout the Christiansburg Strand. One of those mobile units has been condemned and cannot be utilized anymore. The average age of those are 17 years. Their lifespan is 15 years. So we need to work together. And I have agreed and told them that I promised that regardless, after the sale of property, we would try to work together.
Okay, Mr. Abraham.
I think it's quite unique here in the state of Virginia that we have city governments, towns, and counties. Cities are entirely independent. A town is not independent of the county. So everybody who lives in Blacksburg is in Montgomery County, but not everybody in Montgomery County is in Blacksburg. And they do have slightly divergent views, but I think that we're all in this together. In terms of the retention of business and bringing new businesses, we can't overlook the value of the quality of life. There's a company, a new brewery that's looking to come into Roanoke out of Oregon. What they said is we're looking for great culture, a lot of activities, a place where our employees who live here in Bend would love to go and move to an East Coast location. So we all have to be mindful of why companies move here. I'm pleased to have the endorsement of Mike Barber, Mayor of Christiansburg, Bill Brown, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and Ron Rordam, Mayor of Blacksburg, because I think they trusted my ability to help bridge some of these gaps.
Mr. Shepherd.
I'm sure there's been issues in the past between towns and the Board of Supervisors, probably most recently is Blacksburg and the sale of the properties. A big issue with any conflict, I believe, is good communication. I think somewhere along the line there's been a breakdown in communication. I believe I could work with those towns. I'm very open-minded. As a police officer, I've listened to many stories about many different things and had to make a decision based on several different issues. So I'm used to listening, and I think that's a big part of the communication issue. The hardship that Chris talked about earlier, I think it's all give and take, and I think we have to give, and so do they.
Thank you. We sort of touched on that in the discussion just now in terms of the Blacksburg Middle School and Blacksburg High School properties and some of the issues there. Do you have an opinion about a good way forward to move these properties into off square one, where they have been for a long time? Mr. Berger, would you like to address how to move forward with those properties?
Well, I think the board has already put out RFPs for the high school property. I'm not sure what's going on with the middle school property, although the middle school, the difficulty is not a problem, but it's a difficulty is that the town controls the zoning and the county does, and the county owns most of the property, and they haven't been able to come together yet on what exactly to do with that property. I think this is where we need to sit down together and have good heart-to-heart and understand that we're working for everybody, not just the town independent of the county, or the county independent of the town. We need to use that property to the best advantage for economic growth, if that be the way we want to go, for education, if you want to go that way, or whatever comes back on an RFP. And until we get responses to the request for proposal, it's really hard to go into much detail about that.
Mr. Puckett, do you have some opinion on them?
Say the high school and the middle school property, I think they need to be dealt with. They need to, we either need to get them where we can use them for something for the community, or we can sell them, get the money, put it back in our budget. Like when we're looking at schools and things like that, we need extra money for. That could be a big plus for that. I think Blacksburg and the Board of Supervisors need to sit down. We need to dish out whatever it is, the problem we're having, and come to a mutual agreement and get rid of the property in middle school. It's been sitting there for years. It's cleaned up. Grass looks pretty, but it's not helping the community a bit. So I hope we can finally sit down and just do something with it.
Mr. Tuck.
Well, I'm a little bit hamstrung. We as a board agreed not to discuss any of the RFPs or how many we've gotten. So I don't want to talk about anything that's currently pending. I can tell you some of the things I've done prior to receiving those RFPs. As I mentioned earlier, I reached out to the town of Blacksburg and each one of the town council members. When we had a joint meeting, If you'll go back and you'll look at that videotape, I repeatedly asked the town council members, how can we move this thing forward? Have I been perfect in this? No, I haven't. It has been a very incredibly frustrating process. We have a tremendous need, and when I sit there and see the waste, the school has not been used for 14 years. We have been losing, at some estimates, as much as $200,000 a year, and at some estimates, $800,000 a year in taxes. We must move forward, period, one way or the other.
Thank you, Mr. Abraham.
I do understand the urgency here, and I do understand the commitments that have been made by the board, and I support those. Just for argument's sake, I would like to propose one alternative viewpoint. When I look at the old Blacksburg Middle School site, one of the ideas that crosses my mind of something that would make a really good use of that site is a school. Now, we're a rapidly growing community. At some point, I mean, we have right now 7 schools in the Blacksburg Strand. We have 5 primary schools. We have a middle school and a high school. And I think at some point we're going to need another school. To my knowledge, nothing else has been designated. Nothing else has been purchased. And when the time comes, we're going to go looking around and say, where are we going to put a school? And what is it going to cost us to buy the property? And maybe we'll look back on this and say, you know, maybe we should have hung on to it. Somehow banked that property in a park or some other use. And maybe kept it around so that we could use it later as a school.
May I respond to that?
Okay.
When the schools gave us that property, we gave our word that we were going to sell that property for future school construction. When you look at the Blacksburg Strand, right now Prices Fork Elementary School is half empty. That is plenty of room for growth to be able to address those students. At the same time, we can't borrow any more money until 2024. So the reality is we're going to have to pay cash as we go. We have been setting aside money, and we have money set aside, but we do need the proceeds from the schools to be able to pay for the expansion if we're going to do that at Follow Grant.
And may I just say that I did acknowledge that, and I do understand that.
Okay, Mr. Shepherd.
Well, I'm a very honest person. I was a police officer for 12 years. To be honest, the reward didn't net nothing. It's my understanding that property was promised to be sold and the money go back to the schools, and I think we should keep that promise. The process that it is in now is moving forward. I made the statement the other day that at some point, if communication cannot be worked out to where everybody's happy, you have to cut your losses and move forward. So I think that's already in process.
Thank you, Mr. Box.
So the question of how to move forward on the 2 schools properties is something that everybody has asked throughout this election cycle. I'm very proud of my endorsements from every member of Blacksburg's Town Council and from Mayor Rordam, because I think that symbolizes their belief in me that I am capable of navigating the conflict between the Board of Supervisors and Town Council effectively because I understand the needs and desires of the town of Blacksburg. Now, that being said, this has largely been taken out of the hands of both Town Council and the Board of Supervisors at this point because it was put out for a competitive bid using the RFP process. So the bids that have come in have been bids for both properties with the person making the bid aware that they will then have to go through rezoning through Town Council. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to another question. And this time I'm going to be starting with Mr. Becker. And I think we're at the point here worrying about money, where it's coming from. And the question is, do we have adequate funding of our schools, our operating budget? Do you think Montgomery County Public Schools operating budget is sufficiently funded? If no, why? What would you do to fix it? If yes, explain why the board and superintendent claim otherwise.
Well, not being on the board, I would probably not have the knowledge about the funding for the schools. But as far as, if we didn't have the money for the schools, like I said earlier, we could try to bring in new businesses, in the empty businesses we have throughout the county, try to get revenue, get taxes from them, and not try to raise taxes for our citizens of Montgomery County. We need to address the school budget. It's one of the most important things we have, because our children are our future, and we need to make sure that our schools are top notch.
Okay, Mr. Tuck?
Well, currently, when you include debt service, 71% of our budget goes towards schools. When you include debt service, we're spending more per capita on our students than any of the other surrounding localities. So I do believe that we are funding our schools appropriately. We have, every single year I've been on the board, including years that we did not raise taxes, we have significantly added to education. It has been something that all of us on the board have been looking at and making sure that we have a strong educational foundation. And so I do believe that we're funding it adequately. And I don't believe that we need to have additional tax increases. We have been able to meet the needs through growth. We're very fortunate to live in this county when you look at other counties that don't have the growth that we do. And so I think part of that is the vision of the Board of Supervisors that came before me. And so one of the things I want to make sure to do is have that same type of vision and leave this county in a better place when I am done in office.
Okay, Mr. Abraham?
Certainly my perception is that the board is unanimous in their support of public education, and I think we should all be really proud of that. Virtually everybody here, all of our kids, all of our grandkids, are educated in public schools, with a few exceptions. But generally the board has been very supportive, and I want to continue to be very supportive. I think about pointing fingers. If we're going to point fingers, the state has continually dropped in their funding. Currently, the state is sending us about, in terms of the designated dollars that comes into the county, 43% of the designated dollars that are coming in is down from about 50% not more than a decade ago. So I think the best thing we can do is talk to our state legislators and try and get more funding fed to us from the state.
Okay, Mr. Shepherd?
I understand that education is a very important issue, and as well it is to me. Right now, I think basically the schools are funded sufficiently. Everybody could use more. I know that. I do know that Christiansburg has some issues that they need to address sooner rather than later. I believe the sale of these properties will go a long way to getting them started on the right road. I am in support of the school system, just like everybody else here. I think keeping the taxes low, trying to get new businesses or people to start new businesses in this county, and generating more revenue is the answer, and not raising taxes.
Mr. Knotts?
To put it very simply, no, I don't think our schools are adequately funded in the way that they should be. If they were, our teachers would be paid the statewide average, and our facilities wouldn't be in such horrible condition. So how do we fund the schools? Well, that's an interesting problem to try to solve. You've got two methods that aren't raising taxes in order to increase school funding. Right now, we are funded from designated dollars from the state and federal government at a lower rate than we were funded just 10 years ago. So lobbying our state and federal government for increased education funding is a very important revenue stream that we should try to capture. And we also have growth revenue coming into the county. Our county is growing. Businesses, jobs, housing, all of those things are growth revenue through taxes, and the schools need to get their fair share of that growth revenue.
Mr. Murray?
The school board puts together the budget for the schools and presents it to the Board of Supervisors to be passed. The Board of Supervisors has always given the schools what they ask. There has been some dissension in the past years, but they are given what they ask for. When I ask this question as a citizen, what's going on, I was told, go talk to your school board representative, because there's a very different task for each board. One puts together a budget for the schools, that's the school board. The other has a broader concern of how much money can the county afford it, and they said yes, almost. I can't think of a year when they haven't. We've been able to sustain that yes to them because when I talked to the treasurer, from 2004 to today, we have been able to sustain our revenue by growth from 100, he gave me the numbers of 107 million in 2004 to 179 million today. It's great that if we can sustain that growth.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Sure.
I just want to state that I completely disagree that we have said yes when the school board has asked for funding. I think that that is wildly inaccurate, and I think it's been decades since we have said yes when the school board has asked for funding.
I would say that when I was on the board the first year, I think the school board asked us to raise the taxes to 21 or 24 cents. We didn't do that. So I would agree with Mr. Motts that we have not simply said yes to everything that the school board has said or asked for.
When I said
Oh,
this,
I'm sorry.
All speak up.
Okay, I'll
when I said the schools were funded, the budget the school board briefs to the board has always been passed. I don't recall when it had. Chris, you may have a different
I
record.
don't know if I'm allowed to respond. I'll look to the moderator.
I think we'll let it go.
Okay.
This is obviously, everybody has their own perception, and I think that's why we're all speaking here to the group, and you all make your decisions as to what's said, and we can continue the conversation later too. I'm going to sort of continue on the topic of taxes, and the hot topic right now is proration. And so the questioner wants to know, do you support proration of personal property taxes and why? Mr. Tuck, would you like to start us out, please?
Sure. In my mind, proration is an amount or an issue of fundamental fairness. Do you pay the taxes for the time that you own your vehicle? The question I've been dealing with and whether I support proration is trying to figure out the cost of implementing it. That has been somewhat difficult. Our treasurer has provided us a lot of information and indicating that she just needs one additional employee. Our treasurer has said she's underestimating those costs and we're going to need to hire at least 4, if not more, and there's going to be additional costs associated with it. As a board member, that makes it very difficult. So what I've asked from the commissioner, and she's provided it, and the treasurer, there's other counties that do proration, calling them, but also contacting businesses such as Sheeler. I've spoken with Mr. Hagan. I've asked to speak with the Duncans. I'm going to have breakfast with them and find out, and the Martins as well, who own New River Valley Nissan, to see how proration might affect some of our largest employers, and then have an informed decision as to proration.
Mr. Abraham.
I want to echo a lot of what Mr. Tuck had to say. I think the key to it is finding out how it affects our county employees, whether it brings in more money and justifies the additional workload and expense. I do find the concept of paying the tax on what you own when you own it very compelling. In my personal situation, my wife wants a new car. So we're looking at our calendar and having the current tax structure influence our decision on when to buy. I don't think it's in the county's best interest. I don't think it's in the dealer's best interest. I don't think it's in our personal best interest. I think proration, I run an industrial building. We prorate our rents, and it just seems like the appropriate way to manage our taxes as well.
Mr. Shepherd?
I too have mixed emotions. I think proration would make it fair if you pay for what you own when you own it. I'll have to kind of follow Mr. Tuck's lead. I don't have enough information about the numbers, what it's going to cost to collect those funds. I'd want to know a whole lot more about it before I could make an informed decision about proration.
Mr. Miles?
This is an interesting question to come right on the tail of talking about school funding. We have a potential for over $1 million in revenue growth to our tax base if we implement proration. In the interest of policy fairness, I do believe that personal property taxes should be based on the actual duration of ownership, similarly to how we handle real estate taxes or business taxes. However, I anticipate that this issue will be resolved before the end of this year and before any of the, aside from Mr. Tuck, before any of us would come onto the Board of Supervisors. That being said, it's not something that I'm just throwing away because it might not be something I have to decide. I am following it very closely, but I do believe that proration is the fair way to assess personal property taxes.
Mr. Murray?
I had a long conversation with the treasurer, Mr. Sheldon, about this, and I asked him, what's the problem with proration? And he said, he reports now, that you can end up with multiple tax bills in the year. In the scenario, if you buy a new vehicle in January, you pay on the old vehicle, and you get to defer payment on a new vehicle and allow that to depreciate and then pay the tax. Like, this is what he's telling me. And that sounds pretty good. I do like the concept of only paying for what you own. So, and we're getting two different stories one from the commissioner, who was saying one thing, the treasurer seems to be saying something different. He's also concerned about running down bad addresses and having to keep track of 2 to 3 different tax bills on one vehicle. So it's a difficult question. Hopefully it will be resolved before any of us end up on the board.
Okay, Mr. Bucket, would you like to address proration?
I'm go along with Mr. Tuck as far as it needs to be looked into more. We need both government to look at it, the treasurer and the revenue, both to come to some kind of agreement on it, because they're both, we all need to work together to get it, to either vote on it yea or nay. But both parties need to come together and find out the cost, what it's going to affect, how it's going to affect the county and the state. If it's going to cost us more money, then so be it. We'll know an answer. But right now, when you've got one department saying this and another department saying something else, we need to get together. They need to do a study on it and get it brought up.
Thank you. Mr. Abraham, I would ask you, if we adopt proration, if we get this $1 million windfall, what would you propose doing with that money?
Oh, gosh. Everywhere. I don't even know where to start. I don't think there's an agency that we have any control over that couldn't use some extra funding. I'll just mention one in particular. I was out campaigning the other day at the Longshot McCoy Fire and Rescue Department. Had a long conversation with the rescue squad manager out there, and mentioned a series of needs, a series of things that he could put this money to good use for. He said it's a lot easier to get young kids to come in and run a fire truck, run one of these great big red engines around the county, but to get somebody on the rescue squad who wants to go out and pull somebody out of a ditch at 3 in the morning is a lot more difficult. And to have recruitment and to have additional funds would be a tremendous help to him.
Mr. Shepherd?
There's several issues in the county I know that could be addressed with that money. Just a few minutes ago, we were all talking about education, so I think a big portion of it should go toward the schools or toward their debt, where we spent money that we didn't have for schools. There's some smaller issues down in Longshot McCoy Fire Department. There's some other issues besides just in that department. There's a park behind there that the walk has come apart, and I've had several people ask me, was there any way that we could find some money to fix their walk? And it's a gravel walk, it wouldn't cost all that much. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Motz?
I've got to admit, I actually haven't thought of this question quite this way. My initial knee-jerk reaction is to say schools. I bet nobody in the audience is surprised to hear me say that. But I do agree that there are a lot of areas throughout the county that could use and benefit from this over $1 million or right at $1 million in revenue. So I'd be very interested in talking with the various stakeholder groups and finding out an answer to that question, finding out where it would be best spent and best serve the residents of Montgomery County.
Mr. Murray?
$1 million sounds like a lot of money to an individual, but in the scheme of things with the schools, they had I recall, a $2 million carryover this past year that was given back to them, and they've used it for what they feel is important. The McCoy Fire Department, I was out there and I talked to one of the guys about a truck. The trucks are almost $1 million. So the $1 million does not go very far. It doesn't go nearly as far as it used to. And so I'd like to see it go into education, because I think education, somehow we got to get a better handle on the building of schools, the teachers' pay, the resources in the classroom, the roofs, the buses. Education just has so many needs, and we need to address that somehow. Maybe the $1 million is a start. I don't know.
Mr. Puckett?
Like you said, $1 million doesn't go a whole lot of ways, but education would be a good start. Our schools, our teachers, it would help supplement some things there. Fire and rescue, they save us tremendous amounts of money. If we had to hire people to do their jobs and pay benefits and everything. So I look at helping them some, but majority of the money should go toward education, because it's, like I said earlier, that, you know, these children are our future, and we've got to give them the best they can have to make them be the best they are. So,
And Mr. Tuck?
First thing, being a fiscal conservative, I would start paying our debt down. One of the first things, we're taking taxpayers' money, and it turns out to be $1 million or $1.3 million, or after expenses only $500,000. We are at our debt ceiling right now, and we cannot borrow any more other monies until 2024. If we do, we're going to jeopardize our bond rates and put the county in serious financial difficulties. So for me, either we would set that money aside in case of emergency, especially since we're at our debt ceiling, or pay down the existing debt.
Thank you. Mr. Shepherd, we'll have you start out this next question. And I think it sort of came to mind here, we're talking about the rescue squads in the different parts of the county. There is economic disparity across our county. Some parts are generally poorer than others. But many services are extensively supported by volunteers and by donations. How would you address the resulting inequity of services in these areas?
Well, I think it's fair to say that we all need the rescue squad and the fire department, and they do save us a lot of money. I would have to give this some serious thought, but one of the first things that come to mind is some incentives for the people that do that job. I don't know if we're still doing that, but when I was on the fire department, they used to give them a break in their personal property tax. In that fee for buying that sticker that says that they paid their personal property tax. Something along those lines. More money. I don't know where it's going to come from, but more money to give them better equipment to help them recruit new members.
Okay, Mr. Motz?
It's difficult to address the inequities of the service levels when you're talking about a county that is 393 square miles. So we've got a very large area to try to provide equal services, and especially when you're talking about volunteer labor, volunteer fire, volunteer rescue. How do you impassion people to get involved in fire and rescue and other volunteer services? I think you've got to take a long-term approach to that. You've got to get kids excited about it in elementary school, get them excited about it in middle school, and maybe offer an apprenticeship program at the high school level where they can train to get involved in fire and rescue in high school, so then they're impassioned and able to stay in the community and work in those capacities. I think that's one of the only ways to level out the disparities amongst the different areas in Montgomery County.
Mr. Murray?
The economic disparity within the county shocked me when I first came across it. I was seeing kids who were being sent home with food from the schools who didn't eat unless they ate at school. And then summer, I asked, what happens during the summer? Well, they didn't have an answer at that time. Now they've extended a program that where these kids can actually get something. I don't know how to level the playing field without getting at the details of the problem. But the short answer is probably jobs. The longer answer is education. Since education seems to have a correlation between prosperity and the level of education. So that's just a start. But there is a tremendous disparity. People in the more urban parts of the county have a lot less and get by with a lot less. There's a lot less development in those areas. I don't know exactly what the answer would be, but it's certainly something we need to look at to make the whole county better.
Mr. Puckett?
Fire and rescue, like I said earlier, they save us a tremendous amount of money. I've been a member of the Christian River Rescue Squad for 25 years. Excited about being there. I've always been excited about being with the rescue squad. And they do have an auxiliary where they bring in younger recruits, let them learn. And I think that should be used throughout all the rescue squads. I can't speak for, I think Blacksburg has an auxiliary type where they bring in students and stuff. But recognition for these people. If we could do something for them to show we appreciate what they do for the money they save us, that would be one of the greatest things, I think. And it wouldn't take a whole lot to, have a volunteer day to show people I appreciate what you do for us. Thank you.
Mr. Tuck?
The question was in regards to economic disparity, and one of the things that obviously at this point in time in the world, internet is critical. And one of the things I suggested that we do is utilize the PSA, ask the legislators for the authority to be able to provide internet to our more rural areas at discount rates. We could apply for grants. I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do that. But internet is really the key. It's an economic engine. When those kids are coming home with their iPads, they need to be able to connect to the internet. By providing towers in our more rural areas, that will be able to help the education issues that some of them talk about. As far as the volunteer fire and rescue, I wrote an editorial, I guess it's been a couple of years ago, calling and pointing out that I think it would take either a 13 or 17 cent tax increase if we were going to have paid staff. They do a tremendous job for us. I've tried to recognize them as often as we can, and Mary and Matt have as well, and we're very fortunate with the volunteers we have in Montgomery County.
In terms of economic disparity, I think that's been an element, an aspect of this county. Since I've been around here, it's always been that way. It's a very, as Mr. Mott said, it's a large county. It is very diverse. Each of these communities, McCoy, Reiner, Shawsville, Ellett, Laurel Ridge, no matter where you go, it's going to be different economic situation and different that's what I'm looking for. I can't come up with it right now, but I want to echo what Mr. Tuck had to say. I think that the internet is a great equalizer. It helps kids everywhere, and it helps bring forward the natural tendency of people to become involved with each other. And if we can strengthen our internet connections in the rural areas, and again, this is not just Montgomery County, it's throughout Appalachia, but we have to be mindful of bringing everybody to the table.
I'm looking at the time, and we've got about 3 minutes till 1:15. How about if we just go immediately to your 2-minute closing statements, and that way I won't have to rush anybody. And we will start off with Mr. Murray, if you would like to give your closing statements.
All right. My name is Bill Murray. I'm the independent candidate for supervisor for District G. I have guarded that independence by not seeking any endorsements from any political party, group, or organization. I want to represent everybody in District G, and all their concerns without partisanship. I don't want to owe anybody anything if I get elected and sit on the board. My background is I was trained as an analytical chemist, and for over 36 years I was teaching at all levels, mostly adults in community colleges and four-year institutions. Some volunteering as a mentor for students at Shenandoah. And I have been at every meeting since May of 2015 for the Board of Supervisors and the Preserve Montgomery County, which is against the pipeline. I stood firmly with the residents at 401 Givens and was glad to have April stand with them as well when they were rezoned and were forced out of their homes. I advocated for them by attending town council work sessions and met with the park owner and manager to try to mitigate their losses. Unfortunately, homes and property were lost without compensation. Some feel they were not made whole, and of course that's expected. And those residents, however, those residents who decided to stay in the park were accommodated, while others voted with their feet and moved out of the county, which is unfortunate because we've lost people who were working, paying taxes, and contributing something. My skills as a chemist and a manager were called upon when I served as a 1099 contractor with the U.S. Army Medical Corps, where I managed 2 laboratories in their research operations at the Walter Reed Institute of Research. While working in and around the D.C. area, I was asked to volunteer as an advocate for special ed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to interrupt you. Was that 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ms. Motz?
Sure. I want to thank the organizers of tonight's event. I live in Woodbine here in Blacksburg with my partner, Rob. He is a business owner of SciTech Carpet Cleaning based out of Christiansburg, and we live with our 3 children, as I mentioned, a 5th grader, a 6th grader, and a high school senior who incidentally will be voting in her very first election this year. I manage Stonegate and Carlton Scott Apartments here in Blacksburg, and I sit on the boards of the New River Valley Apartment Council and the Virginia Apartment Management Association. I'm the president of Sustainable Blacksburg, the vice chair of the town of Blacksburg's Housing and Community Development Advisory Board, and a member of the Mount Tabor Burritan Club. In 2014, I was honored to receive a scholarship to attend the Chamber of Commerce's Leadership NRV program, and I also completed the Blacksburg Citizens Institute. I think today's questions and answers clearly highlight the differences between myself and my opponent and make it obvious that I am the best and most qualified candidate to represent the citizens and businesses of District G. I deserve your vote because I've spent more than a decade in small business management in Blacksburg and equally as long serving in leadership positions on volunteer boards and community service organizations. These experiences have diversified my knowledge base and have allowed me to develop into a multifaceted and dynamic leader. I deserve your vote because I understand the residents and businesses in District G. My endorsements from the Montgomery County Education Association, every member of Blacksburg's Town Council, and Citizens First clearly illustrate that our community believes I am the best choice to represent the needs, concerns, and desires of the citizens. Again, thank you very much to the organizers this evening and to all of you for participating and for asking your questions. My name is April DeMotts, and I'm asking for your vote on November the 3rd.
Thank you. Mr. Shepherd?
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to participate in this forum. I'm a lifetime resident of the Prizes Fork community. I began my career at a very young age working for my dad. Family sawmill business. In 1984, I went to work for Virginia Tech physical plant, and in 2000, I accepted the position of patrol officer for the Virginia Tech Police Department. In 2012, I retired from the police department with the rank of patrol sergeant due to medical reasons. Since then, I've been driving a school bus part-time for the county schools. I'm also a small business owner, building and repairing acoustic instruments. I've spent most of my life in public service, and I feel I can be a good fit for this position. I have one daughter who is currently attending West Virginia University for her master's degree. She graduated from Virginia Tech in 2012. I have 2 stepdaughters who both attend Bridgewater College. They're just working on their undergraduate degrees. My wife is a 4th grade elementary school teacher at Price's Fork, so I live with the school system just daily. I'm an NRA member, I'm a sportsman. I enjoy hunting, fishing, and camping and other outdoor activities. I will hold the line on tax increases and unnecessary restrictions and excessive spending, which I believe will encourage new businesses. I know some of the members of District D, especially the elderly citizens, live on a fixed income. Tax increases could put some in a position to either sell their property or go without medications or sometimes even food. I will also support and encourage increased tourism, both nationally, internationally, and the international sale of manufactured items produced in Montgomery County. The more demand of goods and services by a diverse clientele, the more employment opportunities business can support. I'm very hesitant about spending other people's money.
John, I'm going to have to close. Mr. Abraham?
I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event and doing their part to keep democracy strong in America. Second, I'd like to thank my opponent and all those on stage who have devoted themselves to this effort. And third, I'd like to thank all of you for coming, especially my friends and family. My engineering degree at Virginia Tech, the greatest lesson was in problem solving. How to analyze a situation, break it into constituent parts, do cost-benefit analyses of competing solutions, and make informed choices. That approach has helped me become a successful businessman. Much has changed in my life here in Montgomery County, but one thing that hasn't changed is the responsible, caring nature of the people. Our county challenges are formidable, but I think we're in good hands. In my many travel opportunities, I've learned that good governance isn't universal. When your garbage gets collected, when the municipal water streams from your tap, when your road gets plowed, when first responders respond to emergencies, when your kids are picked up for school by competent bus drivers and delivered to safe, comfortable schools where they're educated by caring and professional teachers, those things don't just happen. They're the results of decades of dedication, professionalism, and service. We often take those things for granted, but we shouldn't. I feel like I'm qualified for this position. I'm a good listener. I'm a forward-thinking, innovative person, always with an eye to the future. I bring an analytic, common-sense approach to problem solving. I'm honored to be endorsed by Mayor Barber, Mayor Rordam, Chairman Brown, and U.S. Senator Tim Kaine. I'm ready to bring my knowledge, expertise, and innovation to this board and give back to this community that has done so much for me and my family. I appreciate your vote on November 3rd to have that opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Tuck?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I was born and raised in Montgomery County. After going to school at Gateway Christian Academy, I graduated from there, then went up to Concord College, graduated from there, got married, been married to my wife Susan for 25 years, went to law school up in Michigan and came back and opened up my own small business. These last 4 years have been an interesting experience. For me, a budget of $176 million is staggering. Getting into the numbers and digging into it. But if you take care of the pennies, you'll be able to take care of the dollars. And sometimes it's taking care of the small things that are the most important. One of the ideas that I came up with was the Edgar or Goodwill boxes at our recycling centers. We have been able, instead of throwing many things away, we've been giving things away. And that's literally saved tons of garbage going into our landfills, but it's also benefited our community. There's been other little things, whether it be, we just recently passed an ordinance that you can have bees in residential areas in Montgomery County. But we've also passed an ordinance that you can raise chickens in residential areas. Those are little things, but for a lot of people, those are important things. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank my wife. Over the last 4 years, she's taken countless phone calls. She's dealt with me coming home at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night after meetings. She's put up with me. And that's no small task, and so I'd like to thank you.
Okay, Mr. Puckett?
My name's John Puckett. I was originally born and raised in Brookfield, Virginia, graduated from Graham High School. I went into the Marine Corps right out of high school. After getting out of the service, I ended up moving out here 36 years ago. I've been a member of the rescue squad for 25 years, of that 36. And like I said earlier, I volunteered for upward basketball for 7 years. I coached baseball here in Blacksburg for about 5 years. I'm married. My wife works at BTTI here at Virginia Tech. She's a physical tech there and deals with money and travels. I have a 10-year-old daughter that is a freshman in high school. She's in the marching band. She dances. She plays basketball. She's pretty active. Keeps me hopping. And but during the time I've been campaigning through Montgomery County, I've spoke to every type of people that you can imagine. I mean, I've talked to people that are living off $750 a month. I just can't picture somebody living off $750 a month. Electric bills almost are that much anymore. But I would like to be able to represent these people on the board, have a word for them. Just try to keep the taxes to a minimum. Just take care of those people. Like I said, I'm an everyday worker, and I want to listen and work for them just as much as I want to work for everybody else in Montgomery County. So, yeah, November 3rd, if you would, place a vote for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. You have been very prompt in your statements and very concise. Thank you all for coming tonight. I think we can be very proud that we have contested races for our Board of Supervisors. It says that this county is invested in our governance, and I appreciate each one of you volunteering to run for office. Been there. I know it's not easy. And I really do appreciate that you're putting yourself forward, and thank you, Ms. Biggs, for your service and putting yourself out again. And at this point, I'll invite you all to give an applause.